Thank you, Betty. I know we had a moment of silence earlier for Nancy Lewis, but I tell you, it's been a real heartbreaking thing for me. We went to the same church, and she was always right there, everything we're involved with in the church, and also here at the party, so I'm going to miss her terribly. I can't help but mention that as we get started. January 21st is the date you all know about, where we're going to be having the opportunity to vote for the person that you would like to see become the Republican nominee for President of the United States. You all know that. You all also know that anyone who's a registered voter can vote. Bob just mentioned that. So that means that it doesn't matter whether a person has a bent as a Republican or a Democrat or what it might be, anybody who's registered to vote can vote. And it wouldn't shock me any to see a number of people who are not particularly affiliated with the Republican Party to turn out and vote. That's particularly true because there will be no Democratic primary going on at the same time. I would look back at these numbers back in the year 2000 when George Bush won the primary back in 2000. We had something like 125,000 more people voted in the state of South Carolina that year than voted in 2008. If you remember in 2008, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were having their contested primary, so that reduced the number of people voting in the Republican primary by, like I said, by about 125,000 votes. That gives you some indication of the number of people who would rather vote in the Democratic primary if there was one going on. But there's not one going on. So we need to make sure that we, as conservative Republicans, constitutionalists, turn out to make sure that we get a solidly conservative constitutional candidate to be nominated to represent the Republican Party in next year's elections coming up in November of 2012. And one of the things I want to do right now is take a minute just to make sure that we're all educated and understand what we're talking about. Most of you know that I am representing the Greenville County Republican Party in a lawsuit which is pending in federal court seeking to close the primaries so that you have to be a registered member of that party to vote in that party's primary. We often hear this term primary election, and the word election gets thrown around a lot. There is no election in a primary. When you have a primary, you're not elected to anything. If you have a regular, what I call a regular primary in June, where you might be voting for your state house, state senate, United States congressman, whatever, when that person wins that primary, what that means is their name then goes on to the general election ballot, and they'll have the R, the Republican designation after their name. That's what they win by winning the primary. They do not win any election. An average voter, in my opinion, does not just have the automatic right to vote, or should not have the automatic right to help us choose who our nominees are going to be. And that's why we're pushing this lawsuit. But I will tell you at the same time, we want to push it to get it changed through our General Assembly. We don't have to depend upon a federal judge in a federal court to rule in our favor. If we can simply get the Republican members of the legislature, they control both houses, and we have a Republican governor. Governor Nikki Haley has told me directly and has been very clear about this. She supports that legislation. If we can simply get it through the General Assembly, she would sign it into law. So this is a big push that we're going to be putting on. I want to see this push happen between now and early February, because any Republican who's out there currently holding a seat or running for office who's not committed to support us on this, I want to go out there and try and recruit candidates to run against them. I want us to go out there and make this a big push so that when we sign up candidates next March, we've got a slate of candidates who are committed to making this happen in the General Assembly. I hope you join me with that. What I also want to say about this upcoming presidential primary, two different items to address. Number one, we do need to remember we are all on the same team. There has been a good bit of controversy out there that happens in a primary. I understand that. I'm not here to convince any one of you to vote for who I think is the best. Each one of you can think for yourself and make up your own mind. I would encourage each one of you to carefully research these candidates that are out there. All their campaigns are throwing out all kinds of spin. Sometimes what they say is accurate, many times it's not. But here's the point. Regardless of who you're for right now, that person may or may not be able to be standing come January the 21st. There's going to be a caucus in Iowa on January the 3rd. The following week there's going to be a primary in New Hampshire. And that's going to have some impact in terms of how this thing goes. So what I'm encouraging you to do is to work for your candidate. Pick out one. Work hard for them between now and then. But after January the 3rd, I think a lot of us need to reconvene caucus, really consider where we're coming from, and here's why. We have a tremendous opportunity to pick this Republican nominee. We all know about the history. Since 1980, every time we've had a statewide primary in South Carolina, we have chosen the person that's going to represent the Republican Party as the Republican nominee in the general election. Now, a number of times, those nominees have gone on to defeat. So that doesn't mean we always pick the president, but we've always picked the Republican Party nominee. And it's my concern that we do not split that conservative vote so that a moderate wins this primary and goes on to defeat to Barack Obama. We need to make sure that we elect a conservative candidate who can clearly draw a distinction with the President of the United States at this time, so that we can elect a conservative Republican president next year. Now, in addition to the actual voting on January the 21st, there's also going to be a delegate selection process. And I don't know how many of you are actually aware of that process, but anybody who was a delegate, elected as a delegate or an alternate to the state convention last year, actually this year, May of 2011, anyone who was elected as a delegate or an alternate to the state convention in Columbia this year will be permitted to vote at both the district convention and the upcoming state convention next year. So we won't have another election to elect delegates. We already know who the full slate of delegates are. Now, I will tell you from past experience, even though many of you showed up at the state convention in May, because of that time period that goes by, a lot of people forget about it, they forget they were elected, they don't put it on their calendar, and often our delegation is not full. And there will be two separate events. It was already mentioned about the date of the state convention in May, but prior to that, there will be district conventions. And most of you in here will be, that are delegates to the state convention, will be entitled to vote in the 4th Congressional District Convention. Some of you who live in the southern part of the county might actually be entitled to vote in the 3rd Congressional District Convention. We've now divided up our county, or we've had it divided up into 2 separate congressional districts. I want to make sure you're all aware of that. If you have other questions, we'll be able to answer those in the upcoming weeks. The dates for the district conventions have not yet been set. But the basic way that it works is this. A lot of people don't recognize how this works. Whichever candidate for president wins a congressional district, they are entitled to 3 delegates. They are entitled to the 3 delegates from that congressional district. We have 7 congressional districts in South Carolina now as a result of the redistricting. Each one of those 7 districts has 3 delegates to the Republican National Convention. That's a total of 21. And whoever wins that district is entitled to those 3 delegates for the first 2 ballots. So, for example, you have Michelle Bachmann win the 4th district, and Newt Gingrich win the 3rd district, and Mitt Romney win the 1st district, whatever. They each get 3 for each respective district. Whoever then wins the whole state, whoever has the largest number of votes for them statewide, would be entitled to all of those state delegates. I don't know the exact number of state delegates, but some of the 25 to 27 range, something like that, in addition to the congressional delegation. Then we also have the issue, of course, where the Republican National Committee, under its rules, has said that we're going to lose the entitlement to half of our delegates because we bumped up our primary into January. Our hope is that ultimately at the Republican National Convention we'll be able to have that overturned so that all of our delegates will be seated and have the opportunity to actively participate in the convention. That's certainly what I hope to see. At this time, that's not the case. At this time, we understand that the number is that we're going to lose half of our delegates. Again, there's plenty of time to go through all that. The main thing I want to do to encourage you right now is to get involved. I don't think we've had a more important election, not in my lifetime. This election is critical. We have absolutely got to throw out Barack Obama. We cannot throw out and stand for in that office for another term. And we can do that. Think about how important it is here in South Carolina. We're one of the early states. People all across the nation look to what we do here. And we in Greenville County are right in the heart of it. We have so many votes here. How Greenville County goes, so goes the rest of the state. So I want to encourage you, number one, to get involved now. Be friendly about it, even though you might speak for a different candidate. Reassess in early January. Look and see how this is going. There might be a candidate that you're not for today, but you might be for later on the way. It can really change. So let's work hard. What I want to see happen is for us as conservative leaders across Greenville County and throughout the state, for that matter, to coalesce behind a conservative nominee. That's what I want to see happen. I'm hoping that you'll work with me to make that happen. I look forward to an exciting 5 or 6 weeks leading up to that primary on January 21st. Thank you very much. I have no idea the answer, but it's important that we at least understand what the problem is so that people are clear. Up until now, we in Greenville County have been part of the 4th Congressional District. So we would elect our delegates to the district convention, and they would go to the district convention, meet with those delegates from Spartanburg and Union, and elect delegates to represent us at the Republican National Convention. Now, though, with the change in this redistricting, some number of our delegates from Greenville are no longer in the 4th Congressional District. They're in the 3rd Congressional District. But when we elected each other as delegates, we didn't divide ourselves up into the 4th district and the 3rd district, because we didn't even know where the line was going to be drawn. So what we did was we essentially had some language was included, which essentially allows you to go to either convention, either the 3rd or the 4th, depending ultimately on where you reside versus where the line is drawn. So there's going to have to be a process that's going to be used. It'll be sorted out by the state executive committee to work it out, and we will notify everybody as to which convention you're supposed to go to if you are in fact a delegate to the state convention. And I would encourage each of you who has been a delegate or was a delegate in May to please go to both your district convention and the state convention. And we'll just have to let you know which district convention you're entitled to.
Hey, Stephen.
2 more questions and then.
Yes, sir.
2 questions. First of all, I know Bob Bill is vetting for us. Do we vet the candidates as to where they stand on the post primaries? And second of all, do you have any place set up where the General Assembly is how they feel about the closed primaries? In other words, if I start calling each of the General Assembly people, I can confront them or go to Columbia?
There isn't any clear list on any particular location. There's not been a vote on this bill in any recent time period, so we don't have any record of who's on which side. All we have is what they will tell you. A number of them over here in Greenville have committed to supporting the legislation. There are quite a few others who are, they really won't take a position. I can only identify 1 or 2 who clearly stated they're in opposition to what we are have done. But most people are just kind of quiet about it and don't take a position. There's nowhere I can send you to say this person's opposed to us. What I want to do is make sure we get votes, and certainly in the House we can make that happen. In the Senate it's more difficult. We can have a vote so we can see who's with us and who's not.
We don't want lip service either. We want to really go in there and fight on the floor for this.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, one final question. As far as the precincts that are affected on the Rain Tree, and I think we're going to do 3. So how do the precinct changes happen?
Excuse me,
How do the precinct changes happen? Where you go to vote those people that are shipped before?
Well, there are a couple different things. The first question is whether or not any of the precincts themselves have been changed. I don't know the answer to that. No, wait, have any of the precincts been changed, the precincts themselves?
No.
No, okay, so let me address that first of all. The precincts have not been changed, so that means if you've been voting at the local church or the school or wherever, you're going to still continue to vote there in Rainwater or Malden 1 or whatever, Simpsonville 3. None of those have changed. What has changed is where the lines are drawn for the particular House districts, Senate districts, and congressional districts for the elected officials. So for example, in my situation, I live in Riverwalk. I live in the county of Greenville with the Simpsonville mailing address. And I used to be in Gary Smith's House district, and I'm no longer in his district because what's happened, that area's grown so much, several of the Spartanburg representatives kind of eaten up part of Greenville County. So I am now going to be in a House district where primarily in Spartanburg County. So I'll be voting for a different House member. But I still will vote in the same place in Riverwalk, and I remain in the 4th Congressional District. For those of you who are in precincts that are cut out of the 4th District and moved to the 3rd, you'll still go vote in the same place, but you'll be voting for a congressman to represent the 3rd District rather than Trey Gallagher who represents the 4th. All right. Thanks very much.